Yep.
But they don't mind Section 8 money going to them, which I was horrified to find out that, yeah, if a family needs a home, Section 8 will pay whatever it costs to put, these people in homes. And I don't want to sound insensitive, but as a taxpayer, if I own my maintaining my home, and I don't want just anybody being put into a home that they can't afford, they have no interest in maintaining, and then the rental companies just keep letting the houses be more and more run down. So they're ruining neighborhoods.
All right, so affordable housing is one of the issues I love to talk about because I keep on turning that off. In Florida, we are missing 500,000 affordable units. That's one of the reasons we're so high. But the other reason is because BlackRock bought up 41% of the homes on the market, which is ridiculous. Our politicians set wages below, and they help monopolies set wages below a living wage. Then they let those same monopolies buy up all of our property, turn them into rental properties, raise the rates above what we're being paid by those same monopolies. Then they criminalize being homeless if you can't afford one of those properties, send you to one of their private prisons so they can make money off of you. But what we were talking about with affordable housing, the affordable housing that we have in Florida is actually, it has to be built up to a very nice scope. I have a whole packet about it. It's great. What the Republicans did over the past 10 years is take $10 billion out of the Sadowski Fund. That could have built 97,000 homes across Florida and made 33,000 jobs from that. It would have been incredible for the state, but instead of doing that, they just let them get more and more run down. Across America, there are 33 homes that are either empty or just need to be refurbished for every single homeless person. It's not a matter of supply and demand. It's a matter of price gouging. It's a matter of these corporations buying politicians to let them jack the prices and steal from us. And that's why I'm running for state senate. Because I'm tired of it. I'm tired of seeing people being pushed down by the system that we design and that we can change.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to go back to immigration just for a second because it all moves around. But the other day, my mom was watching a news story about these kids who, in New York, they crossed the border illegally. They got sent to New York, and these kids, youngest 12 to 17, are committing crimes, right?
Yeah.
And my mom was upset about that, but I ended up thinking about it later on. But I ended up telling her is that the issue is these kids are going from one bad place to another bad place. They're coming from being broke to being broke in America. And the issue is that everyone likes to complain about immigrants. Everyone likes to complain, about cities like Detroit and Chicago who have a massive black population. And they blame them for their fault, but they're not getting the resources they need. They never get the resources they need, and they're blamed for not being able to get out, right? And that's the same thing happening with immigrants. It's the same thing happening in Florida. My house, my mom told me, was 200 when we moved in almost a decade ago. Now it's 400. She told me she can't afford it if she wanted to buy it now. She bought it when she could afford it. Now we can't afford to buy it now to rent out a place for an aunt in Miami. That thing was destroyed by one renter, still sold for just under 200.
Yeah.
I have a cousin, Miami. To live in a rental place, it's like $1,000 per month, $1,100 per month, and that's one of the cheaper places. So she's gone to her family. We don't get enough resources moved down and blamed on us. And Trump, he's planning to get the economy back, cutting corporate taxes from 21%, right?
Yeah.
Who's the tax? Where's the tax burden going to go on? The middle class.
Yep.
I'm 18. I'm just learning how expensive stuff is. And I got lucky. I have scholarships. I don't got to pay for college. But what about everyone else does? And then not only that, you go into a housing market where you can't afford the houses. So we're sending these kids, people like me, to encourage hurt more yet when you get out. Oh, you know, the corporate. Now you're gonna pay higher taxes because the corporations are paying those taxes, and on top of that, uh, I lost my train of thought. But on top of that, your jobs are not paying well because you're cutting down on unionization. You're saying you don't have to unionize. Elon Musk, a big fan of Trump, is a union buster. Amazon loves union busting. So what am I supposed to do in a world that's going spiraling, 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 and I'm told to pull myself up by the bootstraps? I can't, right?
Yeah.
I can't, and that's what makes me angry is that the Republicans like to pretend to be the party of the working class. They're not. They're the party of the white collar.
What I'd like to say recently is that Republicans like to pretend that they're the party of if you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he'll eat for his life. But what they do is close down the fishing schools, put sewage in the pond, and they give fish to monopolies. Actually, 20%. In Florida, the bottom quintile, the poorest 20% of people, pay 13% of their income as taxes. The top 1% pays less than 3%. The poorest people in Florida are paying 4 times as much of their income as taxes as the richest. And because our corporate tax rate is 5%. And one of the things they love to talk about to get people to move down here is that we have no income tax, which sounds great. It sounds fantastic, except there's a 7.5% sales tax. And when you have to spend all of your money, that becomes a 7.5% income tax. People making less than $110,000 a year, the living wage in the Bay Area, have to spend a majority of their money, which means a majority of their money is taxed at the 7.5% rate. But the richest people, they get to save their money. And so they don't have to spend those same amount of taxes. So you can come to Florida, let's say it's great, it's the freedom capital of the world. If you're coming here with $400,000, if you're coming here with any less, you're just getting pushed further and further down. I mean, it used to be that you could spend 1/3 of your income, you could save 1/3 of your income, and you use the last third on your housing. But when rent rose on 33% in 1 year and stayed there, and home prices doubled in a year and stayed there, that's impossible. The system has been rigged against those already at the bottom. And everybody can see it, but they're restricting who can vote so that you can't go change that. A national voting holiday is obvious. That's one of the most one of the things that would show the most national pride. Say everybody go out and participate in American democracy, but they're actively restricting it. And Russ and I, we were talking to the Board of County Commissioners a little while ago because they were taking $8 million out of the HOPE affordable housing program. And it's just terrible because that affordable housing would be a great investment for our community. It would mean that so much of the money that is going into these monopolies' pockets would be able to be spent in our local stores, not just all going to rent, but going into our economy. And when at the end of the public comment, County Commissioner Josh Wastol, he said that one of the people said God favors people who show support to poor people. And then Josh Wastol said, yeah, God also says thou shalt not steal. He was saying that affordable housing is stealing. When we know that it's these monopolies who are raising prices arbitrarily and actively stealing our money. It is bad government. It is a failure of our government to have 1/5, I think it's more now, but 1/5 of our kids going hungry every day. It's terrible, and I see it every day with my kids at school. Yeah, Hannah.
So in the same vein of making it harder for people who are trying to improve themselves by everything being so expensive, I am a new mother, and I'm also in my first year of college. It took me till I was 24 to go to college because I was so unbelievably poor, but because I didn't reach the age limit because I wasn't considered independent in the world of the IRS. at my parents' income, even though I was living on my own. I was living in a different state as my parents. They were still using my parents' income, so I couldn't apply for any grants. I didn't have the grades for scholarships. But you have to have a bachelor's degree to get a decent job now. But we're not going to help you get a degree. We're not going to put our money towards education. We're not going to empower young students to actually see the value in higher education or in trade schools. And now that I am a mother, and now that I am so unbelievably broke, now they're like, okay, now you're poor enough to deserve it. Because now you have to. Now it's a matter of survival. Now we can give you a grant to go to school, but we're not going to give you a grant to buy diapers. We're going to give you all these opportunities to pay for job training, but we're not going to help you pay for housing while you get a job. We are going to encourage you to work, have all these benefits, parental leave, maternity leave, all this, which is not regulated. A company does not have to give you maternity leave. But we're not going to help you get those necessities and get that education for you to be in a place to take care of your child. So now I have to rely on the government, but only scraps. It's a band-aid over a stab wound. And I say stab wound and not bullet wound because it seems pretty personal. Like it is just a system that doesn't want you to progress. They have all these tiny programs that are severely underfunded. No one working in these offices, and people on the ground floor and in the trenches that genuinely want to help these families. I've met some of the best people working in those WIC offices, trying to help me get benefits, but they're just like, I told them, my son's in a growth spurt. He eats more than 7 cans of formula in a month, and they said, we are not allowed to give you more, and we cannot give you any supplemental funds to buy formula. It's a broken system.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I'm going to talk about college and then how the system is broken for actually providing for people. So I'm an educator, right? I mean, education is one of the best things and most important things. My dad's a professor. My mom got a ton of education. We care about education. But the way the university system is set up right now is just hedge funds that give out degrees. And we are overvaluing higher education to a ridiculous amount. Most of the skills you need for a job, you get on the job. We need to invest in vocational training and more things that give us the basic skills that we need, give us more higher education, but will help us but won't put us into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. As we talked about before, they take these people, these 17-year-olds, and say, sign your life away. Sign up for these massive amount of debt that we'll lie to you about and won't let you actually pay off, and then make you pay it off like 40 years with only paying off the interest. It's ridiculous. Bright Futures is one of the best parts about Florida. It means that people can get a higher education, it means they can improve their lives. But they've been cutting the benefits year after year after year. And I was interning for Congresswoman Castor, where I was dealing with the federal government and how to get aid to people who actually need it in our community. And because it's not funded, because the IRS isn't funded, because our judicial system isn't funded, because we don't have enough people there, thank you so much. See, hey, serious that is. Thank you. It was so hard. It took months and months for anything to happen. I was talking directly with these federal agencies as an intern for a member of U.S. Congress, and we still couldn't get anything done because there's nothing there to give to the people because my opponent is actively taking away from the government. And one more thing that he's taking away is not voting on Medicaid expansion. I think it's 800,000 people that if we just accepted the money from the federal government would get their health insurance. Which, again, we want to prevent crises. We don't want to have to deal with them after they happen. And if we accepted that money, so many people's lives would be improved drastically. And it's our money. We paid our federal taxes. We paid that money, and he's denying us to get it back. it's not just like saying, oh, we want to be responsible for the tax owner. You're stealing from the taxpayer. You're stealing from the taxpayer. You're denying them the services they paid for. More of that cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
So here's my question for you. I'm an advocate for the springs. I'm an advocate for our environment. If you've been looking at the news at all, DeSantis just put out an announcement that he's going to build golf courses and 250 room hotels in our park systems.
Really?
Yeah,
They are.
park systems.
Yep.
I didn't hear that yet.
Yes.
Hang on.
And he's having all of the meetings for the DEP on the same day at the same time, so advocate groups can't go to all of the meetings at the same time in a week from now. But here's my question for you.
You sure you want to go to vote?
How,
Yeah.
no, how are you going to work with the Republicans? Because the Republicans are probably still going to have a supermajority to protect our Florida environment. That is one of the main draws and a big funding source in Florida. So how are you going to work with the Republicans as a supermajority to get things done?
That is a fantastic question. I really love that question. Because, yeah, I can talk all I want about what policy I want to implement, but it doesn't matter if they'll just deny me everything. So, first, I want to talk about the environmental impact. That's crazy. There are enough golf courses in America to make 2 New Hampshires. 2 New Hampshires. With so much water they're using, which is terrible for a state. We're only getting 8,000 new people a week using all that water. And I talk about it almost every time. The St. Augustine grass that uses a ridiculous amount of water. And I've had to re-sod my parents' lawn so many times. I hate that St. Augustine grass. It needs to go. Sorry. But in our state legislature, it is a super majority Republican because they gerrymander the state. They choose their constituents rather than the voters choosing them. And the main thing that I can do is debate any bills that get put forward. Ron DeSantis has been cutting funding from our environmental services. A lot of that money has been committed for years. If they're proposing to cut that money, I can go to the Senate floor and debate exactly what the context of the bill is and make sure that it can get challenged in the courts with really good information later. Because yes, it'll be hard to stop or push through environmental policy. And here's the other thing. The Florida has the most Republicans that care about the environment, which makes sense because we're seeing some of the worst effects of climate change. Now, we know that DeSantis doesn't really care. He'll take away everything related to climate change from our laws, which is ridiculous. I'm a science teacher, so I'm teaching my kids about the water cycle and about pollution, except I can't teach them about pollution. I can't teach them about natural disasters. I have to teach them about natural hazards. And all of the curriculum has been changed, has been modified slightly so that our kids don't get to know about the things that'll be killing them. I taught my middle schoolers last year. I gave them, on April Fool's, I gave them a whole lecture on what climate change is and how it's affecting them. And after it, they're saying, Mr. Ben, please say April Fool's, please. And I was telling them how in 40 years, there could easily be 4 billion people in this world living in a food shortage without access to adequate nutrition. That every 10 years, 10% of our land will become unlivable because it'll get so hot and arid. And our children deserve to know about that. So there might be places in curriculum where I can help teach them about that so they can do more advocacy. I'll propose all the laws I can to restore the funding that has been taken away from Florida forever, Florida future. I'm getting the exact name of it right now, but we need to fully fund that. When the USF was trying to pave over, or Hillsborough County was trying to pave over the USF Forest Reserve, I launched a protest, and we got that saved. It was the last remaining natural wildlife corridor in the state, and it would have destroyed so many of the wetlands. I will do my best to uplift voices of the people who are supporting our environment. Yeah.
We just need to get rid of
Yes.
Democrat. We got to get there. We got to vote.
I'm just going to ask you one more follow-up question because I am also an educator. I've been teaching in Florida for 20 years. I teach every science that there is at the high school level. Thank you guys.
Where?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. So here's my other question for you. Is I too have noticed the degrading and watering down of our Florida standards and all of the offhanded privatization of our school system. They're taking so much money through charters and through those voucher programs that the actual public schools are struggling.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas to help fix that?
Yeah. I absolutely do. So, whoever doesn't know about the history of private education, if you listened to Oprah's speech last night, you would have gotten a little bit of it. After Brown v. Board was decided, a lot of the white parents didn't want their kids to be integrated with the black kids. So they started private schools. And they got the government to take away funding from the public schools to give it to the private schools who could take any kids they want. So they got the government to take money from the black schools and give it to the white schools, pushing down minorities. And that history is continuing on. Now, one of the biggest problems isn't about the racial difference, it's about unionization. Because when we fund these private schools, it destroys teachers' unions. And my opponent voted for Senate Bill 256, which made it so that teachers' unions specifically, not many other public sector unions, had to have a 60% participation rate in order to have collective bargaining, which is disgusting. But I was sitting in my public school classroom, and I was just furious over the $4.2 billion we're spending on private education. Now, I'm an economics geek. I'm a policy wonk. I love doing it. So I sat there for a while, looking through the budget, looking through all the Florida Department of Education information they had, and I did the math, and I realized with that $4.2 billion, we could hire the 5,000 teachers that we are missing in this state. We could raise the Florida teacher salary average up to the national average of $69,000, which is currently $54,000 in the state. And we could eliminate all school meal debt, and we still have $806 million left over. And even if that wasn't true, which it is, we should do it anyway because investing in our children is the right thing to do. We should do it anyway because those $4.2 billion, that is the one place that Republicans will invest in a private corporation, right? They won't do it if it's a private corporation, if it's a local business that needs a little bit of support, but they will do it if it's a private school that'll give them kickbacks. We should do it because it helps people, regardless of what the economic impact is, especially because investing in our future is good for our future.
Richard Corcoran, who was our he owned charter schools.
Yeah.
And he was our superintendent of the state or whatever he was, and the education department of the state. And he owned
And yeah,
no, you was in Florida.
I'll tell you about a conflict of interest. But also Ben Sasse, right? Stan's appointee, terrible for UF. Increase the amount of money you're spending by 3 times, or the overhead by 3 times. And now he's getting investigated by DeSantis. But the real conflict of interest is with everybody in the state's biggest problem, insurance. Home insurance is rising, we're skyrocketing, car insurance is the highest in the country. And everyone was complaining about it. DeSantis is like, all right, I hear you. I understand this is a really big problem. I'm going to deregulate the insurance market. I'm going to give the insurance companies everything they want. You know why he did that? Because they built a $50,000 practice driving range in the government. He charges money for people to come have a private range session with him. They just lobby him then. It is so illegal. It is such a huge conflict of interest. DeSantis does not care. I mean, if a Democrat does just a little bit wrong with their campaign finance, they'll get sued to whatever. They'll get sued to hell. Huh?
How much more time does he have?
These last 2 years. Yeah.
So you gotta go.
Yep.
You know, Rick Scott's the richest guy in Congress.
Who what?
Rick Scott, richest guy in Congress.
You remember 2026 is gonna
No,
be
I'm too young.
Yes, we have a lot of Trump politicians. Rick Scott, the richest, he stole billions from our Medicaid program. He also denied public transportation, which would be federal dollars that we pay for our public transportation, which would be a great investment for the state, and give us a public way to get around, rather than having to give all of our money to Ford and GM and Shell and BP to build more roads that are cost ineffective and then destroy our environment. He invested in a private corporation and they gave them the contract. And now they charge us more than they need to because they're funding a project that's going on in California. So we paid for this system and they're charging us twice for it so that they can build another thing out in California. It's ridiculous.
He refused to expand the Affordable Care Act, too.
Yep.
I was just going to ask, can you speak more to the specifics of your goals for public transportation?
Absolutely. Now, here's one thing I was talking about for USF specifically, and for a lot of the colleges. They've been, to reduce overhead, they've been getting rid of their public transportation, which is terrible. At UF this past year, since Ben Staff stopped there, they got rid of SNAP, which was a great program that I know made many of my friends safe getting home at night after a party. At USF, we have Ybor about a 20-minute drive away. It's a nice club area. If we had a bus system to and from there, it boosts the economy, and it made the roads so much safer for people driving back, drunk. If we had public transportation here, then we wouldn't need a bigger highway than you'll ever see anywhere in Europe, except for like an autobahn. We wouldn't need most of this area to be covered in pavement, and we'd have more affordable housing units. I want to invest in our public transportation, specifically in our Amtrak. We still have a ton of rail lines. Now, we do have a law on the books that says that commercial rail has to give way to public rail, to commuter rail. But we don't enforce that. Just like we have a law on the books that says that if you run an insurance company that goes out of business, you can't just start a new one because we know you're doing a scam, but we don't enforce that. We have to enforce the laws we already have on the books. Danny Burgess, my opponent, sponsored the bill to defund HART, the bus system in Tampa. I want to fund the bus system, make more light rail. We have the streetcar downtown. It's great. I know people are moving downtown just for that. We should build out more of that. It's lovely. I love things like that. We have to look at the exact numbers. We had a plan back in the 80s to build public transportation. If we did that, we would have a phenomenal economy here. Instead, we don't, and we're spending so much more money. My engine light just came on. I'm going to have to spend a huge portion of my paycheck fixing that. Now, actually, St. Pete has some of the best public transportation in all of the South with their Sunrunner. We want to model that for the rest of Florida. You want to say something? No. Jason?
On the topic of car insurance and being the highest in the union, with Florida having the most dangerous roads in the entire country, actually here in Pasco, there is literally the deadliest road in all of America, Highway 19. So, in order to
press that and keep your hand off the button.
Yeah.
In order.
Just speak loud.
All right. Minor complications. So, in order to reduce car insurance costs, how exactly will you advocate for improvements to road design and also
Let me see if this will work. So the first thing we're going to do, the first thing that we're going to do is get more cars off the road. With less cars, there will be less car accidents. How do we get more cars off the road? Public transportation. Wow, yeah. I-4, the I-475 corridor the most dangerous highway in America. And it costs so much money to keep that most dangerous highway in America. If we invested in public transportation from here to Orlando, we wouldn't have spent so much money doing more lane expansions. Huh?
Red line.
Yeah,
Red line.
we want them. But they have the rail from Orlando to Miami, which is what Rick Scott invested in himself. There aren't any finished plans yet. We want it. Okay. So 1 second. Invest more public transportation so we get more cars off the road. Also, I know a problem with home insurance is that we offer a lot of reinsurance to the insurance companies. I have to look into if we offer reinsurance to the car insurance companies, but it causes us to pay for our insurance twice because when our home insurance companies mishandle our funds and then default on their liabilities to us, then we have to bail them out. So we have to pay to save ourselves twice. That's the problem with car insurance. We do that. Also, a huge number of people, I think it's 47% of Floridians, just don't have car insurance, which is crazy. We're also a no-fault state, which I got into a really bad situation. Well, it wasn't me, but my ex got T-boned by this guy. It was entirely his fault because he didn't have car insurance. She had to pay all of it out of pocket. So even with the highest rates, her insurance didn't have to save her that she was actually paying for. It's ridiculous. We need to get rid of no fault. Yeah.
Do you have any updates on those radioactive road days, the roads they're going to lose?
Yeah. It was just a study that they sponsored. No more information has come out of it that I've seen. It's disgusting. Of course, it hurts the environment, so my opponent okayed it. But no, there's not much information coming out about it. Yeah.
One more just to the public transportation is with car insurance being high in Florida, a big reason is because of our lack of public transportation. People that do not have a vehicle and are walking everywhere, the crosswalks are like 2 miles apart
Yeah.
from each other. I don't know if you've ever walked in Florida. I'm not doing that. And so people are having to jaywalk. Completely understand they don't want to make a huge 4 mile trek to get across the street, and it's causing accidents, and it's unsafe for public safety, and it's making car insurance go.
And
This bad public transportation, they can just get on an air-conditioned bus or Amtrak.
and one of the big reasons there's so many people without car insurance is because many of those people are undocumented. They're here illegally. Now, Republicans will say, all right, get them out, kick them out. That's not the solution. Allow them to get car insurance. Allow them to be here legally, get training on how to drive appropriately, and we won't have a problem like that. Yeah.
But it's not even about being illegal. It's about being low income.
That's
Just
true.
think about it. You're making $15 an hour. You can't get an apartment for less than, I'm gonna say 12 to 15, and that's just for a one
Yeah.
bedroom, not even nice.
And you make 3 times the monthly rent.
Yes. And then if you can afford to buy a car, then you gotta worry about the insurance
Yep.
and gas, and you still gotta eat.
Yep.
How do you do that when you don't make enough money to even pay your rent?
Yeah. And it's so disgusting to me because 6 people, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, Bernard Arnault, also Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg, there it is, own $88 billion more than the bottom half of the entire country combined. The money is there. The services are there. It's just that it's kept in 6 people's hands. It is disgusting. The system is designed to take from impoverished people, push them further down, and pump it into very few people's pockets. And Republicans say, oh, but if you help people, it'll be inflation. That's not what caused inflation. What caused inflation is people raising their prices. McDonald's is charging like $14 for a meal now, but they're making huge profits on that. It's not going back to the employee.
Have you heard of all those companies cut a bunch of people out of their working? Suddenly you're making record profits.
And it'll buy back their stock for records amount of money, because that money has to go to the shareholders. One of the worst things about not about America, but about the direction America has gone, is that people have a fiduciary responsibility only to make money for the shareholders. That means whatever will make their margins larger, they legally have to do. They have to steal from the working class in order to enrich their shareholders. We have to get rid of that. That's why I want to enforce antitrust laws and fiduciary responsibility to the citizens, not to the shareholders, not to just their corporate margins. All right, I think this was fantastic. We've been here for an hour, and I appreciate all of y'all for coming. Are there any final thoughts that anyone wants to say?
So, I'm going to stand up for this. I'm an old retiree. And one of my biggest concerns is that now that we have to raise new excitement at the federal or at the national level, how do we get that excitement translated to people at the state level? Because they will also have an impact on our lives that can't be measured. How do we get you elected? How can we get some type of comparison that gets out to the public that shows that, wait a second, we have a better alternative than Danny Burgess?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, your local elections are the most important. Everybody comes up for the president, or, you know, but you have to get out, spread the word, talk to people. I mean, literally, knock on doors and do that. I mean,
Anyone who has a house they can put signs in, who has signs that
Yeah.
they can take home.
So,
yeah, yeah.
fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking it. There are a few different things. One, do what you're doing right now. Come to more of my events and Carl's and all the local candidates here. You'll find all that information on Mobilize. I'm sure most of y'all know. And we'll be doing these weekly. We'll be doing town halls weekly. If y'all want to come to more of those, support it, because when we show off how many people are there, more people want to come. We can see the momentum that Harris is getting, and it's because she has such a strong base that shows up to her events. Donating is, of course, always helpful, and I really appreciate it a lot. I have QR codes on all of my merch. Putting the yard signs out there is very helpful. And on Saturday, we're going to be having a volunteer meeting over by Raymond James Stadium. Thank you. If you give me your information, write it down my clipboard, I'll shoot all of y'all a text and an email to give you the information about that. And Russ Miller will be helping to lead a lot of our canvases and other volunteer drives. Okay, we'll talk. All right.
We definitely want everybody to sign that sign-in sheet so
Yeah.
we all can keep in touch. And we'll be doing training on how to knock on doors. It's actually fun. You'd be surprised. It sounds scary.
Yeah.
And that's what really turns out the vote. The candidate who knocks on the most doors wins. It's a rule of thumb. Even in a Republican district, you can still overcome a lack of enthusiasm that Republicans have for their candidates this year. I don't know if anybody was paying to the Hillsborough County School Board elections. We had Hillsborough County also. And DeSantis gave $1 million to one of the Republican candidates for school board, and they lost outright. They don't even have to go to a runoff. It was so cool. And same thing happened across the board. We won 4 incumbent school board candidates beat the opposition so badly that only one of them has to go into a runoff.
Woo! Yeah.
And that's just a lack of enthusiasm for DeSantis endorsed candidates. And Trump endorsed candidates. We all saw what happened in 2022, 2018.
Lost every election since 2016.
I know.
To add on to what he said, here in Pasco County, there was one race for the school board here in Pasco County, District 4. And just correct, the person running against the candidate that was endorsed by Ron DeSantis and also all the Republican commissioners and congressmen.
Yeah.
Here in Pasco County, won 51% to 49%.
Wow. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me too.
All right. Thank you for being braver and showing up. I appreciate all of y'all, and I'm excited to see you out on the campaign trail again.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
Did anybody hear